Welcome, welcome, welcome to the next episode of the CEO Next Door. I am Mike Mayer, your host, and with me today is my co-host, Donovan Morrison, and our esteemed guest, Randy Eager, the CEO of Integrated Silicon Technologies. So let's start by learning a little bit about our guest. Randy, can you give us a quick overview of what you do, what you've been up to?
Sure, Mike Donovan. Thank you for having me. I'm sure we'll have fun, maybe some surprises along the way. I think looking at my career, it's easy to cut it into two halves. First half was big company, climbing the ladder after undergrad. And second half was, okay, post-marriage, I was dragged to Pittsburgh. And it turned out to be a wonderful thing. During the early days, I worked for BASF, big German chemical company. Actually learned how to be an entrepreneur there in those days. Didn't realize it at the time. I guess we now call them entrepreneur. And it was a wonderful opportunity. Really learned a lot. Didn't have to raise capital, but was able to build an actual real business within BASF. Great fun. In Pittsburgh, pretty much started out with an MBA and getting that completed, and then jumped into really the entrepreneurial career, starting with Carnegie Mellon Tech Transfer Office. Live here in Pittsburgh, have for quite some time. The CEO journey or the entrepreneurial journey really started about 20 years ago with that start at the Tech Transfer Office at Carnegie Mellon.
Great. So I'm curious, Randy, coming out of BASF, what was your biggest takeaway or learning that allowed you to continue onward to the Tech Transfer Office? And then I kind of want to would love to learn more about your overall experience with the Tech Transfer Office and really just demystify what that is and what it was like working within that environment.
Sure. So probably the biggest thing, I grew up in a small town in Michigan and went to a gigantic university, Michigan State, but really didn't, I just had a hard time picturing what life was going to be like. I was so focused on landing that first job, finishing school, getting that first engineering job, that it was like, hallelujah, I made it. And then all of a sudden, there were all these things that I could do. So my life went in different phases. BASF taught me that I, as a person, even though it was a 50,000 employee company, could actually make a difference within this giant company. And through hard work, my life was all external, has been forever. So building markets, building customer base. So I took away from BASF was, it is possible to actually build a giant market for a new product. So it's, as a person, it is possible. I built a team, but I did the seeding and getting it launched. So it taught me a whole bunch of things, and I had management above me, beside me, that really supported me and pushed, and it really was wonderful.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic catching the entrepreneurial bug from a larger corporate entity.
It's strange. I don't think there's anything wrong with starting your first company at age 40. So we all mentor lots of folks. I'm an EIR, an entrepreneur residence at Carnegie Mellon, very part-time, University of Pittsburgh a little bit. And I'm always asked that question of, how do I get that first one started? I've got to get it started either before I graduate or shortly after. And I'm always telling people to relax, pick an industry that you love, go in and get some real experience. They're Carnegie Mellon students, so they all get huge salaries. So go earn some money and learn how to learn about a specific industry, or join a startup in that industry that's already past MVP. They're at revenue and they're going forward. Go get some experience. Don't feel pressure to actually start something right out of undergrad.
Yeah, gaining that.
Like there's a lot more pressure today than there used to be.
Yes, yes. And I think gaining that experience is really crucial. I mean, we started our business directly out of undergrad, and there are pros and cons to each approach. But had we had the knowledge that we have now and some of that real world experience, I think we would have been better set up for success. So totally understand that approach. So from there, what led you to the tech transfer office at Carnegie Mellon?
Yeah, it was a crazy thing that I did the MBA, and I didn't, and I did it because I really wanted to launch something, but I really didn't have. I have an engineering undergrad, but I'm really not that technical. I don't build stuff for a living. I'm the epitome of the, I guess, the sales and marketing guy. Applications, business development, it was my whole life. So I was on the lookout for somebody with real technology, and Carnegie Mellon. Literally, we can walk to Carnegie Mellon. Turns out that I've had a couple of stints there, and the reason we came to Pittsburgh was because my wife landed a job there. She has 2 degrees from Carnegie Mellon, also. So it is sort of a family thing, and got an introduction to the woman that was running the tech transfer office, thinking that everybody in the office had to be attorneys because they work on licenses. So it turned out to be really surprising that no, what they really want were people that were good at building businesses, building markets, being that business development guy, because that's what you do. So that it turned out I had the right perfect skill set for a tech transfer licensing officer, as we were called.
Can you explain more about what a tech transfer office is and does, and
Sure.
what your role as entrepreneur in residence, what does that actually mean also?
Yeah, okay. So let's do the EIR thing last. Let me step back a little. The universities work, they work because in a research university like Carnegie Mellon or University of Pittsburgh or Stanford or MIT, Georgia Tech, these are all very, very good research institutions. And the way they work is the research, the professor wears 2 hats. They teach courses and they do research. They have their own little business, as strange as that may sound. They don't exist without them writing proposals and bringing money in. Publish or perish, we've all heard this. So as a result of writing proposals and bringing capital of money, research money in, you do work, you do interesting things, you invent stuff, you write papers. So the proposals have to be great. There's lots of competition, as you can imagine. And so the good ones rise to the top, land a lot of research money. They build a team, much like a startup. They'll have PhD students who work for them, literally work for them. That research money pays for them. They do work on the projects that the professor brings in. And sometimes if the group is large enough, they bring in enough money, they'll actually have full-time staff. So it's this small little company within the big Carnegie Mellon. So that group generates 2 things, papers and overhead. So about half of the money they bring in from research goes to pay all of the overhead, and the other half the money pays for the students and professors' time. So it's a machine. This is how it all works. That they invent new things, and actually, if they're working with the 3-letter organizations, NSF, National Science Foundation, Department of Energy, Department of Defense, if they're working on projects like that, they're actually required to submit what's called an invention disclosure. So they invent something and they are compelled by contract to disclose what they've invented. And here's where it gets connected. That invention disclosure goes to the tech transfer office. And that disclosure gets assigned to somebody like me. When I was there, I would meet with the faculty and the PhD students. Likely the PhD students are the ones who actually do the work. So I would meet with the team, understand what they were doing, understand what the possible range of applications are. Generally, the problem is the professor, grad students only have a very narrow application for something. They don't think big. My job is to stretch and to broaden the search. So my job is to take that technology and to find a home for it, a license. So there's a formal agreement, a license agreement that is done between the licensee of a company and the university.
So it sounds to me like it is almost a little bit of the inverse of what you may traditionally think about when starting a business, where the solution is developed out and then an individual like yourself is coming in to understand whether there is product market fit. I mean, when professors and PhD students are developing out whatever they're working on, do they have commercialization in mind? Or is it solely just, let's do this research, and if we find something cool or if we find an application, then we can really scale it up and turn this into something?
All right, several answers to that. The goal is to create more papers, and you need more research money to do interesting projects. So I would say, if we hold that thought, if we spin back out, if you're an entrepreneur thinking, you have two ways to work with the university. So I've spun 4 of these things out of Carnegie Mellon. So I worked in tech transfer office. I left while spinning a company out. So I resigned as a tech transfer office and turned into a CEO with faculty and 2 grad students. So that's how I left the university. And so you hit the nail on the head. You didn't know it, but you hit the nail on the head. There's 2 ways. One, you find what you think is an industry, and you think you find, first you find the professor, you get along really well, they do cool stuff, and it looks like it's going to work in a specific industry. You know, it's a hammer looking for nails, if you will. So the alternative, which is one that should be used by us entrepreneurs, it's you find the problem in the world you're dying to solve, and then you go around to all the universities looking for that solution, that, you know, post customer discovery. So you find this big problem, do a bunch of customer discovery. Now you think you know what the solution should look like. You haven't built it, but you think you know what you're going to build. Then go around to the universities and find a faculty member, a group that's working on exactly that problem. And then you take that, you plug it in, do a license, you've got IP, they probably file patents or will file patents. Now you've got a kind of a solution. It's definitely not a complete rounded total solution, but it's the core potentially of this solution. And you've got IP and you've got this brand, in my case, Carnegie Mellon, attached to it. And now it makes it so much easier to raise capital. They've probably been working on it for 4 or 5 years, maybe 10 years. So they've developed a complex, cool solution. You've got IP, you've got a brand behind you, and now you can go to market faster, and it's easier to raise capital.
So when raising,
Can I answer that?
yeah. And when raising capital, obviously you can pursue grants, and then you can go probably the more traditional venture route, but will the universities themselves actually finance projects, or does that become almost a conflict of interest? Or how does that dynamic work?
Some universities will have a little pot of money to help. Carnegie Mellon's case, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here, it's $25,000.
Okay.
They have $25,000 that they can give to a promising group led by a marketing, somebody like me. They'll drop in $25,000, not for salaries, but maybe to do more discovery, to help get things greased, to pay the attorney, to help with the license agreement, that kind of stuff. So there's $25,000 kind of to get it started. Gap funds is the phrase that the tech transfer office here uses. but that's the extent of it. So
Okay.
you in a license agreement, the business side, there's an upfront fee. This is pretty much all license agreements. There's an upfront fee of some amount of money. CMU will do equity instead of upfront money. There's royalty payments, of course. There's a success in the sense of there's sometimes milestone payments, but there's definitely milestones to make sure that you're actually using the technology, and royalties, if I haven't mentioned that. But so that's the business end of a license agreement. The beauty, though, of this team is they know exactly how to write research grants. So SBIRs, generally these teams are super. They just know how to do it. This is their work product, literally, in some sense. So any spinoff from at least Carnegie Mellon, I think it's super rare that they don't get an SBIR. So in our case, with the current company that I'm leading, we're working in the solar industry, renewable energy, and we're building wafers, silicon wafers, and probably turning them into solar cells as well. Those two products are not made in the US. And the Department of Energy, this upsets the Department of Energy, I'm happy to say. And so they're paying attention. We've won American Made Solar Prize, and our guys can write these proposals so fast. It's really super impressive. But we've already applied for 2 other things, DOE related. So yes, so there is not direct research from the university, but the teams can really write proposals quickly and targeted.
That's very clutch. I remember trying to tackle an SBIR application, and that was one of my least favorite experiences during our business. And I mean, it had no chance. Like we tried partnering with one researcher, and he had 1 foot out the door. So we had no hope of it going through. And from talking with folks afterward, it's to your point exactly. Sounds like though you don't get one through until your 8th or 9th go around, but then when you crack the code and figure it out, that is a wide open door for additional funding.
What isn't obvious, so in this case, the faculty member has officially retired. So he's coming with me, he's joining me full time. So having his name on a proposal that goes to DOE, holy shit, they pay attention to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that goes a long ways. So I'm curious, and this would just be, I guess, hypothesis.
I have one more thing there.
Sure. Yeah.
There's something, we've all heard of SBIRs. There's something that's very similar called an STTR. And any startup can do this. So if what you're working on happens to blend really well with a faculty member in some university anywhere, you two can take advantage of their proposal writing skills, and you together can get an award for an STTR. 30% of that funding has to go to the university, and 70% goes to the startup. It's a wonderful thing. The light bulb that should go off is, hey, what about the IP that the university is going to generate? Well, you just need to be smart about how you divvy up work and who does what. So it is entirely possible that they do work, but there's no actual IP generated. So you have to be a little creative.
I just want to clarify. Me having a startup, I need help with research and getting grants and funding. Do I come to a tech transfer office? I come to a university and I'm a little. This is new to me, so I'm trying to understand. Like I can get PhD students to help me do research and professors, and then help me pull money in, and then I can use that for my startup. Like how do everyday entrepreneurs take advantage of this service?
Yeah. It's not straightforward. It's probably different at every university.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the tech transfer office is a great place to start. It turns out the Carnegie Mellon Tech Transfer Office has a startup guru. His name is Reed, and Reed keeps track of all of the faculty members who want to launch companies. So he's the guy. So if there's a Reed at every university, I don't know if there is, Reed's the man at Carnegie Mellon, and Reed knows everybody who is in some stage, who hasn't left yet, but who's in some stage of the process of spinning out.
But
And
does the
you meet
idea
with
come
Reed,
from?
you tell him your background, you tell him your interests,
Okay.
talk about skills,
Okay.
and he does the matching, literally.
So if I
Got
had
it.
no tie to Carnegie Mellon whatsoever, could I approach Reed in the tech transfer
Yeah,
office, or
absolutely.
do you need to? Okay.
Yeah, no, Reed is looking for, I hate to keep saying it, people like me that can lead things and are external oriented.
Okay.
If you come to Reed and say, I want to be the CTO of something, that's sort of an awkward discussion, because that's what you go there to find the CTO, literally,
Got it.
the technical folks. So it is maybe unfairly weighted to BD CEO types, because that's really what they're looking for, is external people that know an industry.
Okay. So, Randy, when it comes to working with a university, I think a lot of folks can view it as almost a black box, and there can be a lot of bureaucracy and politics and red tape involved. Do you think at this point in your career, you have cracked the code on how to navigate that? Or with each of the 4 companies that you've worked on and spun off, is there always some new hurdle or challenge that presents itself that you have to navigate?
There's a couple predictable challenges. We can talk about those. They are not what you expect. But the process at Carnegie Mellon is very smooth, actually. It's smooth, provided the faculty member is going to be, there's some details here. I don't know if we have time, but as long as the faculty member blesses the whole thing and is going to be part of the spinoff in some way, at Carnegie Mellon, faculty can spend 20% of their time pursuing whatever they want. So they can do 1 day a week with the startup, literally. And this is okay. So Carnegie Mellon is a very unusual place, super unusual. Now that's maybe not fair. Significant number of faculty have startups. It is definitely cool to be a faculty in a startup. It's supported. They can be a CTO. They can take an operating position. But proof's in the pudding. You got to keep bringing in research. You have to keep writing papers. So provided you can do all of these things at the same time, you're good. But so at Carnegie Mellon, they help crack the code because there is a spin-off license agreement. Actually, many years ago, 20 years ago, when I was in that office, I helped the director write what turned into the spin-off license agreement. And it's a standard. Don't mess with it. You can have your attorney make edits, but basically it's a super good deal for faculty. It's really low upfront equity. It's very low royalty rates going forward. And you can incubate for a little bit of equity. You can postpone paying for patent fees for a while based on a little equity. It is super friendly to spinning off companies. University of Pittsburgh here in town does not have such a thing, and it's painful to spin things off because of that.
Yeah, I would think
if other
having kind of
universities
a
have solved this or not. I don't know.
Yeah, having a standard template of sorts where the equity is a flat rate for kind of everyone, or the reducing the negotiable pieces would, I would think, allow for a much more streamlined process.
Yep, there's no friction. Here it is. It's the same. It doesn't matter what your company does or what the technology is. It's the same. Where before you had to negotiate everything. So you had to do you asked, what do tech transfer folks do? Well, you look at industries, then you have to understand for each industry, for a specific technology, what a typical license looks like in that industry. It's a lot of work. So And we had to do that for every spinoff. Now it's a standard thing. It can happen fast. It really is a wonderful, wonderful thing. But to answer your question about what the problems are, I would have to say that the largest problem is, what's the cap table going to look like? Who gets what? So this is universal problem, and it doesn't go away because you're working at a university. In fact, it's worse. Faculty members generally think they deserve 80-90% of the company because they're the faculty member. Reed, Magic Man Reed, sits down and has a little chat. He is the holder of averages, so he knows what the norm is, and he's very good at convincing faculty members that, hey, cap table equity, we can work on how to structure equity. There's a bunch of ways, as you all know, but it's about what happens in the future, not what happened in the past.
Randy, can you talk to some of the companies that have come across your desk that have become successful, and what that process was like and what they do? And I think I want to just make this a little bit more real for people. We've talked a lot about process and services, and let's go into more examples. I think it'll help people conceptualize. Yeah,
I'm not sure I have any names that are familiar, but probably of all the ones I did during my 4 years there was something called Plextronics.
Okay.
They had a nice exit. That was a real win. Again, it was the classic license agreement. The faculty member did the 20%. He didn't leave the university, but I should make this point. But a couple of grad students did. So I would go so far as to say you have failed if you license some technology from a university and you're a startup and you don't get grad students to come with you.
Yeah,
because I don't care how smart you are and how much of a background you have, you won't be able to convert what they have created into a product without them.
So will you tell us more about that? Yeah, what is that business? What is the business? What is Plextronics?
And was this one that you were involved in?
Yeah, I did the license agreement for this one.
Okay.
Yeah, that was one. Plextronics, it was they were actually a long time ago, but they were in the solar industry. They were working on what we would call thin film type solar panels. At that time. They had some technology to work on the different layers. So thin film solar panels have different layers, and they had invented one of those critical layers to actually convert the sunlight into electricity. So that was their thing. They were going to do manufacturing, and a big German chemical company swooped them up.
So how does, again, let's go back to how that all got started. That's a great example. Did that start with entrepreneurs outside of the university?
Actually,
okay. Yeah, needing some help to finalize a design.
Yeah. So this was it works when it's obvious. So for me, with Eric and this making wafers, silicon wafers, this is really obvious. This is a huge market. It's a $17 billion market with no supply in the US. So how much discovery do you need to do? The same thing for Andy, the guy that became the CEO. It was clearly in a large market and very early on, actually. So Andy did his usual, what you would expect, some due diligence, and turned out this was a great opportunity. So Andy had met the faculty member, so they got to be friends. And while Andy was investigating and researching all of this, then when they were ready, they came to the tech transfer office, and basically I worked with them to do disclosures, to file a couple of patent applications, and then to license the whole package to the team. And then they took this technology, of course, raised capital, started implementing. There it was lab scale. So they had, they didn't incubate on campus. There they raised enough capital right away to open a lab, an office labs, and to continue the process. And once they reached a certain point, they built a prototype, small prototype piece of equipment. And they were pretty close to revenue, and then they were scooped up.
Okay. So did you actually have a defined role? Was that within this company? Was this one of the 4 that you helped spin out? This was just on the licensing side.
We can talk about those, but this one was one I did as a licensing officer.
Yeah, would love for an example or 2 of the few that you actually spun out, helped spin out of the university. And
sure.
I think the big question would be, I mean, you've seen at this point probably hundreds, if not thousands, of companies or potential ideas or companies come across your plate. For the 3 or 4 that you have decided to work on yourself, what pushed you across the edge to kind of go, yep, this is the one that I want to jump in on. This one has a lot of promise.
Okay, so there's been 4. The very first one, and the reason I left tech transfer, was with a faculty member. They had some technology that would work in the auto industry, which is one that I had gotten to know at BASF. So it was like going home. I felt comfortable there and understood what I thought I understood the problem. This is what I should have done. So we formed the company, and then we started doing due diligence. Okay, this customer discovery, this made no sense at all. Nobody would do that today. This was a long time ago. So I trusted the faculty. I trusted the team that they knew that they'd already done this customer discovery. Well, nobody had, it turned out. So we spent a couple of weeks in Detroit and found out this was a CAD add-in that would, using AI and machine learning portion of AI to help designers completely speed up their process. And it turned out nobody cared. So, visited my old friends, and I really thought that we could fast track this, but no, it turned out people didn't like this at all. They gave all kinds of reasons they wouldn't use it. Did customer discovery completely the wrong way. It's embarrassing, actually, of how poorly we did that whole process. But went back, licked our wounds, and strangely I saw an ad in a Wired magazine that had a circuit board, a very detailed circuit board with components on top and bottom. And this algorithm could do that. It could place things on 3D environment. So called a friend who knew people who did circuit boards, and before you knew it, we raised $4 million. Cisco Switching Division was our star beta customer and Product of the Year award when we launched, and we were acquired. So it turned out to be a circuit board design tool, not a CAD tool.
Nice.
But it worked. So that was one. So in that case, we spun it out. We used the license agreement, the standard license agreement. And the professor didn't go, but he spent a day a week with us. And 2 of his grad students came. Thank God, because they wrote these algorithms. Mm-hmm. You could never, they were the only ones who could interpret it.
Yeah.
And maybe this is probably the biggest point when working with university code. We hired real software developers to sit next to them and help, and to build out the whole product, from printing to all the boring stuff that PhD students never do. So we had to write the entire product. There was the core engine, but it's not done. It's not a product. So we ended up rewriting everything, no surprise, but their core algorithms still were intact. So don't think just because you're going to a university, you're going to have a finished product. No way ever would you ever have a finished product. All right, that was the first one. The next two happened 2 years ago and 3 years ago. And I was an entrepreneur in residence, which is basically you volunteer time. In this case, at CMU, there was a program work that was focused on just PhD students. They received $50,000 to spend the year post defense to focus on launching their companies based on their research. So for a whole year, I was working with them a couple hours a week and moving them along the way, helping them do customer discovery, understand what market requirements are. And they then would spend time in the lab trying to make prototypes based on what they're learning in the market. And we just pushed it down the road for a whole year. They had they had time pressure, but it wasn't like a startup because they had capital. They still were allowed to use the CMU lab, the lab they were working in. So it was just a perfect environment for this, and loved the program. I wish all universities would do this, but I have not found another one that did it. In both of these cases, another fantastic program. NSF and the other organizations have this called I-Corps. I don't know if you've heard of this, I-CORPS. This is focused exactly on this program. A PhD, a technical lead, their professor, and a external lead like me, BD sort of guy. The three of us, I think it's 80,000 you get from the I-Corps program, and you have 6 months, I believe it was. And it's a crash course on how to do customer discovery. You do 100 interviews in, maybe it was 4 months, 100 interviews in 4 months. And that capital is there to travel, it's meant to facilitate, so you have no excuses, there's money. You can go to trade shows, you can be productive. You can travel and meet people. So there's capital to do that. And who pushes you to do 100 customer discovery interviews? I mean, nobody does. So this is really a great thing. At the end of that, they push really hard. You meet every week. You come together in the beginning and the end in person for 3 days on either end. There's teaching teams. It is a super, super program. Highly recommend that if you're going to do a CMU, sure, but if a university spinoff that's been funded by one of these sources, NIH, NSF, DOD, they all have these programs. You really should go through it. It's
super
really
worthwhile. Yeah, it's nice that these frameworks are in place to allow these solutions that are coming out the room to explore and actually understand whether there is something there.
So with both of these, I worked with them for a whole year, made lots of progress. And then we did one of these I-Corps programs to do more customer discovery around the country. And then there was enough signs that there was a yes to move forward. And then we did all of the license agreement, formed the companies, all the things you pay attorneys to do.
Yep.
All that stuff was all set up. We of course had that question of cap table, who gets what, and but we're able in both those two cases. These were hand picked. These are fantastic opportunities. One guy is working to create green cement, a whole new way of creating cement without using without producing CO2. So this is, who wouldn't want to be involved in that? And the second one is a robotics play with a brand new type of clutch that significantly reduces the weight of a robotics arm and the power required to operate it. So 10, 20x kind of deduction. So both of them have very, very bright futures. They've all raised more than 2 million so far and aren't at revenue yet, pretty close on the clutch. The green cement thing is, this is this is a big one. It's going to take years, but it's worth fighting for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like all of your experiences within the tech transfer office have facilitated a lot of learning on your end about different industries, different spaces.
Absolutely.
Pretty cool opportunity to be exposed to this many varied things. Randy, I really appreciate all of the background on tech transfer, but I did, before we wrap today, want to have you maybe provide just a high level overview of a couple other non-university related organizations that I know you're involved with, Founder Institute and TIE. I think it would be interesting to hear about your perspective from more of that investor, advisor, board member viewpoint, and just to make our listeners aware of these organizations, because I think they can, from briefly what you've relayed to me, it sounds like there are some pretty incredible resources that aspiring entrepreneurs can take advantage of and can explore through these organizations as well.
There are both of these, and they're national, actually international organizations. So lots of people can take advantage. It's not just Pittsburghers. But Founder Institute, there's 200 chapters around the world. Every major city has one. And okay, let's consider Pittsburgh a major city. I founded the Pittsburgh version, and it is simply we call it idea acceleration. It's the earliest place to come learn. 14-week program where you can come with an idea or without even an idea, and you will learn from myself and a couple of other serial entrepreneurs on how to do this. Plus, Founder Institute has a back office, ID and password to get in, and every week there's very specific topics that we work on, and there's lots of resources for each of these topics online. What's the best part? Most of the folks, it doesn't have to be, are 30, 40 something. In age, and we take any industry, any background, and but these are high growth kind of companies. These aren't consulting practices or restaurants or bars. It's not that. It's the high growth type companies. There is, when you apply, there is a hurdle. There's a questionnaire to go through, a test of sorts, personality and intelligence. Actually, we weed out half. So about half the people that apply don't make it. I'm not sure what that says, but that's what happens. And so the people that show up in the class, it's $800, $900 for 14 weeks, and we take 2.5% on a warrant basis, if you know what a warrant is, and we price it at your first priced round.
For our listeners, can you briefly explain what a warrant is?
A warrant is basically a promise to sell equity at a future time. And our future time is when you have an exit, but it's priced based on the day you close your first price round. So we dilute innovation. Founder Institute dilutes just like everybody else. So that's how that works. And so the two parts of the program people love, three. They love being pushed to stay on track. So, when you're a sole entrepreneur and you're trying to build something, there's always tomorrow. And with this program, you have to move, you have to work, you have to stay in line to keep up. So it's a great way to stay focused. And second, we put people into groups. We meet on the evenings. You keep a day job, Tuesday evenings, and you're in a group that meets twice during the week, 4 or 5 people, small groups, and you help each other. They choose a president. So it's a good group. We have people 5, 6 years later that are still meeting with their groups. So people love that. They love being pushed. They love the group thing, and I didn't realize how important this was, but they get to meet 3 people every week, 3 new people every week from the community. We do a discussion, panel discussion on that topic for the week. So I bring in maybe a vertical industry expert and one or two or more CEOs, startup CEOs, either current or former. And so they get to meet the panel. And then the panel turns around at the end and everybody presents. We start with one sentence the very first week, and we end with a 5-minute investor pitch with a deck. So when you're done, you know what you're doing, you have a game plan to go forward, and you have a great 5-minute pitch, which is pretty much what you need to apply to an accelerator, which is the next step.
Yeah, really equipping early entrepreneurs with the assets to be able to succeed.
So that's one. TIE Pittsburgh, or TIE globally, is a entrepreneurial organization. It's led by what they call charter members. We are startup folks of all shapes and sizes that had exits and have a couple of dollars to throw around. We have a small fund, and we have a couple of programs that help. We're all focused on helping the next generation of CEOs be successful. Each chapter has a little bit different programs. Ours, we're building something that it's a group of CEOs, startups that have to be at revenue. That's the requirement. And that group, there's 10 to 15 of them that we're building, and we meet once a month. We work on as many big problems as we can as a group. And then there's 1 hour a month separate from that. That's a half a day, 1 hour to do one-on-one mentoring. So those are the two different organizations.
Yeah, sound like some good organizations that early stage entrepreneurs should really consider taking a part of. But out of respect for your time, I know we've been on quite a while. I want to start wrapping up, but before we do, maybe you could just give us some parting words of wisdom for our, blossoming entrepreneurs that listen to our pod.
So after that first circuit board design startup, after we were acquired, I went to one of our funding agencies as keep throwing this word around, EIR, Entrepreneur in Residence. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful to be on the side where you're writing the checks. Love that side. But that's what started the Founder Institute, actually. So during those 5 years, I met with 2 or 3 CEOs a week. That's an EIR's role, is to find. I end up leading 15 investments during those years. And you're listening to pitches all the time, trying to find the right ones and to help where you can. But by the end of that, I was sick of hearing people come in. Usually they're engineers pitching their ideas of problems they want to solve. But what I was tired of hearing was that they hadn't done any discovery at all. They didn't talk to any customers. That's bad enough. We all would agree that that is just the price of entry. Don't pitch somebody until you're up to speed on the industry and the desires of your customers. But the worst part was they had already left their day jobs because they were sure that they had. This did bother me, and I tried my best to encourage the right behavior. But I vowed that someday when I had time, I was going to build something that fixed that problem. And I started something on my own, but then it turned into finding these folks in Palo Alto called Founder Institute. So I was immediately in love and wanted to run the chapter, create the chapter here. So, all right, if there's one thing, it's customer discovery, and do it right. There's a book called Talking to Humans. I don't know if you've read this. This book is fantastic. It is the Bible. You can read it in probably 2 sittings. It's short, but it's the Bible on how to do customer discovery correctly. Cliff Constable, I think is the guy's name. but talking to humans. Really, any startup CEO who hasn't read that is not doing full. They're not doing justice for their teams.
I think that's a good advice, and that is something we see at Main Event Digital with almost every single one of our clients we've ever had. And usually one of our first questions is, what do your customers want? When have you last spoken with them? How often do you engage with them? Do you have net promoter surveys? Do you have a customer steering committee? Just all of those questions, we get just blank stares. No one's talking to their customers. It's such an easy thing to do. It doesn't need to be formal. We recommend just picking up the phone and just make it casual, one-to-one even. Just keeping it simple.
Yep.
That takes you quite a bit of the distance. Just learning where are their pain points, what are their asks, what's working for them, and you would be shocked how quickly you can start delivering tools that they actually care about and want, and that will drive more revenue for your business. It seems so simple.
Sometimes I get asked by people just entering college, if I want to be an entrepreneur, what should I study? And I think most people might say engineering. Mm-hmm. Not me. Product management. Search out product management programs. Yeah. There is nothing better than a CEO who is a product manager, because they appreciate what you just said. They appreciate all of that, and they are all over market dynamics, the market requirements. It is really, that is the major. Sure, it'd be great if you had an engineering minor, or if you understood some technology, absolutely. Yeah. But it's product management. So when I get interns, or maybe I'm giving away my secrets now. So when I go look for interns, I go to the product management master's programs. These guys are fantastic interns.
Okay.
Don't tell anybody.
No one listens to this anyway, so you're fine. We just like seeing each other's faces and hearing each other's voices.
Product management. And if you're not a product manager but want to learn more, there is of course, a product management industry association. There's a chapter in Pittsburgh. There must be a chapter in every town.
Other big cities like Pittsburgh.
Yeah, other big cities. And the beauty of it is you would attend to their events. You get to meet lots of product managers, and you just may hire a few.
Good tip. All righty. Well, we should wrap it up. Randy, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. I think your interview, it's been insightful. So we appreciate it. Hopefully people get some use out of it. And Donovan, thanks again for your time.
Thanks, Randy. Appreciate you coming on.
You. Enjoyed it, guys.
Right, guys. Have a good one.
Everybody got a dream, let me show you all love. From an idea, working it into a startup. This the show that you need, what more could you ask for? Never know who become the CEO next door. Tune in, every episode insightful. The type of vibe you will want to subscribe to. Let's go. Hey.